I have had an on again, off again relationship with this girl since junior high. We've constantly been in each other's lives, and even to this day, we still talk. I thought I was in love with her. Shocker, I wasn't. But in high school, things got pretty serious between us. And the more serious we got, the worse we treated each other when we fought. It was the most toxic relationship I have ever been in. But we're actually great friends now. At the time, I was working stock crew at the mall toy store. Sometimes it was an early morning shift. Sometimes it was overnight, so my sleep schedule was all messed up. We were dating and sleeping together pretty regularly my entire senior year. She had her circle of friends, I had mine, and they rarely intersected. Now, Kyle gave a bad name to all other monster-chugging, drywall-assaulting Kyles. He was physically and mentally abusive to his girlfriend and later wife. He manipulated his friends into letting him walk all over them. Got one girl hooked on pills after he got her pregnant so she would be forced to give the baby up. Just a next-level scumbag. Kyle was a part of both our circles. He was friends with a few acquaintances I had, and the girl was pretty close to his girlfriend. The girl and I had just had a really bad fight a few days before and had made up in our usual way. As I was getting ready to go to bed for work the next morning, my phone went off. It was a text from Kyle followed by 3 pictures. One nude of my girlfriend, one of my girlfriend and his, and the last one was only half loaded, but it was clearly a picture of my girlfriend giving him ABJ. I was furious, but as I had already graduated, I wouldn't run into him again to take my rage out the traditional way, so I just said forget it and moved on with my life. I was still mad at the girl for cheating on me again. This happened multiple times on both ends, so it was forgiven pretty quickly. So we fought it out a few times and eventually made up when she told me the whole story. Kyle had told her I was sleeping with his girlfriend's sister or something, and that this was how she should get back at me. Now, was it petty and dumb? Absolutely. But he wasn't so bright, and the story wasn't so far-fetched that she didn't believe him. She told me that since it was BS on his end, she was done with both of them, and we went on with our lives. The start of the long game. A few years go by. The girl has moved to another state, but we still keep in touch. And out of the blue, Kyle's wife hits me up on the Book of Faces. We talk about how life has been and whatnot, where we live and such. Turns out she's just down the street from me. We keep talking every so often when she texts one day asking for a favor. I'm not working that day and bored out of my mind, so I oblige and run a pack of smokes down to her since she's out and can't get more because of her kid. I get to her apartment and we hang out for a bit, talking. We head out to the patio for a cigarette, and in the daylight, her shirt is almost completely see-through. I make an offhand comment about it, and without a second thought, she pulls her shirt off. We go back inside and go to town on each other on her and Kyle's bed. We keep the affair going for a few weeks, then just kind of stop. At this point, I felt my revenge was complete. I had this guy's wife on his bed, and he wouldn't know till they got into another huge fight. I wipe my hands off the drama and go about my day. Fast forward another few years. My band had just finished a huge show before we went on tour, and as I was doing the meet and greet thing at our merch booth, I got a Facebook message from Kyle before the quarantine non-friend messages. Kyle was in the hospital. He said it was serious and questioned, "Did you ever spend time with Hannah?" I'm looking at this text, thinking of all the ways I could mess with his head, but I decided to probe a little by saying, "I think that's something you should ask her first." He replies, "I did, and she told me something happened at our apartment. I need to know if it's true." So I think for a second and send him 2 pictures we took, one of her giving me oral and one of the aftermath. He just replied, "Thanks," and blocked me. I think. Good. Now the D knows what it feels like and goes about my merry. But this story isn't done yet, friends. Not by a long shot. See, unbeknownst to me, Hannah and Kyle had another kid around 9 months after our affair, and it wasn't Kyle's. From the pictures, it was obvious that we didn't use protection, and there was no pullout, so he immediately suspected it was mine. Hannah knew better since she was already pregnant when we started, but just barely. Kyle viewed me as his enemy ever since high school because I stole all of his friends. So knowing that he was raising the child of someone he hated just burned him up inside. He turned to hard drugs and became a raging alcoholic, tried to get information on where I lived, and kept trying to get revenge on me for all of this, but failed miserably. Lost his job, his family, and what few longtime friends he had. Basically, his life just crashed around him. About 2 years ago, I reconnected with another ex from high school, and she told me the aftermath. What Kyle tried to do. What ended up happening to his life? Hannah took him for everything in their divorce. Last I heard, he was locked up for robbing a liquor store while carrying methamphetamines and a loaded pistol, which landed him in for about 12 years. The guy gets my high school girlfriend to sleep with him and sends me pictures. I did the same years later, and it ruined his life. Let's move to the second story in this video. When I was 14 and still reeling from my parents' divorce, my mom started dating this total sleazeball named Ronnie. Covered in crude tattoos, he rode a loud motorcycle and always smelled like weed. Mom told me he made her feel alive again after so many listless years with my dad. But I knew Ronnie spelled nothing but trouble from day one. Still, any objections I raised got brushed off. She was in deep, fantasizing about this dangerous new bad boy. Over the next year, Mom withdrew more into Ronnie's orbit, frequently leaving me alone overnight while she partied with him and his rough friends. I'd even spot her passed out drunk or high when she stumbled home in the mornings, looking dazed and disheveled. It was like she became a whole different person. Meanwhile, at school, I'd overhear rumors from kids who worked at the nearby mall food court, talking about seeing Ronnie openly hitting on young female customers. I even witnessed him myself once in the parking garage, getting cozy inside his pickup with a girl barely older than me. Furious, I raced to tell Mom, determined to convince her to leave the dirtbag. But showing her those hickeys on his neck only made her cry mascara-streaked tears of denial. She just sobbed, "You're lying," while I begged her to open her eyes. After that attempt backfired, I felt powerless watching Mom's downhill slide, unable to pull her from Ronnie's toxic grasp. Over the next few years, the pattern worsened. Ronnie disappeared for days, doing who knows what, while Mom withered, anxiously awaiting his next return. Until his homecomings often meant explosive fights from dawn until dusk instead. The whole block hearing Mom's shrieks and pleas for him to stop as furniture crashed inside. By 17, I was staying nights sleeping in my car, returning mornings, trying to protect Mom from Ronnie's raging outbursts spilling onto our lawn for all to gawk at. But she had long stopped listening by then, isolated, terrified, trapped under his abusive control. The snapping point came when I found Mom crumpled on the bathroom floor, barely breathing after Ronnie choked and then abandoned her. As she faded in and out of lucidity in the ER waiting room, I swore ultimate vengeance no matter the cost. After years of repressing fury while this demon corrupted my only parent, something primal in me finally cracked. She might not survive another episode with Ronnie, the doctors warned. Well, that monster wasn't getting near her again, I determined. His ruthless reign of terror died today. I found Ronnie, later that night, crouched behind our shed, stinking drunk and clawing pathetically at the back door. Gone was any scrap of fearful hesitation in me. Only icy resolve remained as I strode towards merciless justice, teeth clenched and fist tightened around the heavy wooden stake. Swift retribution delivered with my own hands would finally end this nightmare. I repeated inwardly like a meditative chant. Ronnie's slitted eyes registered dazed shock as I approached, then fleeting worry seeing my makeshift weapon rise up. With the faded bat firmly in hand, I stormed outside to the backyard, where Ronnie waited obliviously by the fence, running his mouth about my little herb garden back here. Reality felt disconnected somehow, like I hovered over myself, watching it all unfold. "So I heard you like hitting women," I said coldly, making Ronnie spin around in confusion. His eyes bulged, seeing me approach wielding that weapon, gears slowly clicking. He even raised his palms, trying to backpedal some lame excuse or apology. But my fury was deaf to any last lies, as I channeled years of impotent rage into each crushing blow. The bat cracked satisfyingly against his shoulders and knees as he cried out hoarsely. Through the haze, I thought I heard Mom wailing nearby too, but my sole focus stayed on those areas guaranteed to bruise deep purple for weeks. A message had to be carved into his very flesh this time, I decided. By the time Ronnie crumpled, wheezing to the dirt, I figured a few ribs and his right arm were likely fractured. Looming over his quivering form, I felt only cold purpose still. Come near her again, and they'll never find your body to ID it, I promised. Now drag yourself out of our lives for good before this bat finds your skull next time. I stood vigilant until Ronnie could claw his way to unsteady feet and limp off down the road without so much as a backward glance. The sound of Mom's station wagon peeling away barely registered before my daughter's mom gently took the bat from my white-knuckle grip. "It's over now, babe. You protected your mom at last," she said, enveloping me in her arms as delayed shakes set in. My family supported me fully, vowing secrecy even from the cops to preserve our fragile stability. After all, hadn't justice only been served out to that coward at long last? In the months after, I rebuilt bonds with my mom once she processed the protective rage behind my actions. No apologies between us were needed, just a wordless understanding that demons from our past could finally be laid to rest on both sides now.